Okay, Chaver, Bez Hashem Yisbarach. Let's jump in. And now Perek Lamed in the Heilige Tiferes Yisrael, the book from the Maharal that he wrote about the Torah, what Torah is, understanding what Torah is. So in chapter 30, and the first section, we're going to do the second section of chapter 30. Perek Kama de Brachos, in the beginning of Brachos, Tav Zayin Amud Beis. Mashma she'atorah nitma chamisha kolos. It teaches us that the Torah was given with 5 sounds, 5 voices. Chamisha kolot. And here's what it says. Rabbi Chelba taught, anybody who goes to a wedding and doesn't make the chas and the kala happy, eno mesamcham and mesamcho, over b'chamisha kolos, they're like missing out. They're losing out on the 5 sounds with which the Torah was given. What are the 5 sounds? No, for the 5 kolot. Kol sason v'kol simcha, kol chasan v'kol kala, kol amar hoidu. These are these 5 times of the word kol in the Navi describing a wedding. And the Gemara said earlier on the previous daf, actually it's a really important thing to know for whenever you go to a wedding. The Gemara says that the main reward you get for going to the wedding is for the words that you say to the chassan and the kal. Very important to tell them how much you love them and how special they are. Very important thing to know that. That's like the thing of being mesameach chassan v'kala is the words. Whereas the exact opposite in the house of a mourner, the main reward that you get is for the silence. For going in and the halach, you're not allowed to start a conversation with a mourner. So sharing that silence, and I know myself as having been once a mourner, that it's the deepest. When your friends don't try and fill up the sound, they're just there with you. It's the greatest. And at the wedding, the very interesting thing, like on one hand, it's the greatest day of your life. On the other hand, you really need to hear that you're loved and appreciated. Very important. So it's a very important thing to bear this in mind.
You are the Chatan, you are the Kala, you tell yourself that and you express
that? Absolutely. But the emphasis is on the guests. And so the thing is, when you go to a chasana, try to think of specific things to tell them. And that's really mesameach. Okay. So if you're not mesamech, then you lose out on the 5 kolot that the Navi describes that are related to a wedding. Kol sason, kol simcha. Right. So in the bracha of the 7 brachas, we mentioned 4 of them, but the last one is kol omer hodu et Hashem. V'im mesamcho, and if you did make them happy, then you're zoche. Then you merit not just to be connected to those 5 sounds that the Navi describes, but also to the 5 kolot of Matan Torah. Shenem Avi kolot u'brakim. The pasuk says there were sounds, kolot, and lightning, the kol shofar, vahi kol shofar ve'elokim inenu v'kol. So it says kolot, which is at least 2, and then 3 times the word kol, so a total of 5. Kol at Har Sinai. Rabbi Aval says, if you're able to make the chassan and kala happy, it's as if you brought a thanksgiving offering, as if you brought a korban toda.
Excuse me, where are we in the
chapter 30? Right. So, here, you want me to pull it out on the thing?
I have it.
So it's like a bunch in where it starts off uva perek kama de brachos, and then I'm a little bit down into that paragraph.
Okay. Yeah, if you want to share it, that would be good.
Absolutely, I'll share it. Last 1 minute. Okay. Rav Nachman Amar Kilu Bana Churva Achas Rav Nachman says if you make Chassan and Kala happy at the wedding, it's as if you've rebuilt one of the ruins of Yerushalayim. There we go. Shenemar ki yashiv shvus haaretz kevrishona amar. Ubir davazeh, to explain this Gemara. Ki af shehai b'matan Torah brakim v'anan kaved. Even though at Matan Torah there were other things going on, there was lightning and there was a big thick cloud and so on. Lo haya echad mehem chamisha. There was nothing else that was there fivefold. Only the kolot were quintupled, right? Where there were five of them. Rak hakolot al pi dat Chazal hayu chamisha. V'davar zeh mipnei. Why is this? Ki hakol moreh al metziyut. Sound is teaching you about reality, about becoming real. Shezeh inyan hakol shehu yotzei el hametziyut. Right? There's what you, in order to say anything, all words begin with sound. So for something to be brought out from potential to actual, the link is the kol. In Kabbalah language, it's the zer anpin. The spheres from chesed through yesod correspond to kol, and malchus corresponds to dibur. So anytime we want to become actualized, we have to be ready to make a sound, right? And that's why, like in davening and going to the forest, sometimes we just make a sound. And the shofar, Rosh Hashanah, the birth of babies, that's how we first came to the world, just making sounds before we can say any words. And so finding that place of expression, the pure expression, that's the glue, that's the conveyor, that's the thing that links potential to actual, is kol, is the sound. And so by Har Sinai there were chamisha kolot. There was nothing else Maharal is emphasizing. There was lightning and there was clouds and so on, and there was even, like we saw a couple of chapters before, there's a midrash that also brings that the clouds were dripping water. There was water there was fire, but nothing was fivefold except sound. Chamisha kolot. Chamisha kolot.
Sorry, I can't. Are you sharing the screen?
Oh yeah. Oh no, I didn't share the screen. I put it up on my screen. Sorry. Oh my goodness. Thank you. I'm so glad you spoke up. Thank you for expressing the sound. Here, okay. Rav Nachman Amar Kilu Bana Churva Chamim Chovishalayim Ubir Davazeki Av Shayv Matan Torah Brakim Vanan Kaved Lo Yechem Chamisha. None of them was fivefold. Rak hakolot al bidat Chazal hayu chamisha. Only the sounds were 5 times over. V'davar zeh mipnei ki hakol moreh al metziyut. Sound is all about becoming real. Shezeh inyan hakol shehu yotzei el hametziyut. It is that which brings you into reality, makes you real, right? When we are chas v'shalom depressed or detached or addicted or whatever, we get you go into yourself. You quiet up. You clam up, right? You're not making sound, right? Making your sound the world is so important, right? Even sometimes that could be like a way out, just to make a sound. Like find your sound and do it. It is that which can be found and heard by someone else. This is something that is understood, self-understood. As I spoke about another place, things which exist but don't have complete existence, they sit quietly. That Yerushalayim sits alone, quiet. That's this description of when the Torah was being given. And the word seichel in Maharal is a very hard word to exactly translate, but it kind of means like spirituality. it means kind of the soul's way of perception. When the perception of the soul, the perception of HaKadosh Baruch Hu was coming into the world, the Torah was being given, so there had to be sound. Yatsa Seder HaSichli, that great Seder of the Torah, this whole new thing of everything the Torah is coming to the world, it had to have major sound. Before this, even though there were the avos and so on, but there was not yet the full expression of how Hashem wants things to be in the world. There was not yet a Torah in the world, and for it to come to the world, there had to be sound. And therefore, it was accompanied by sounds, because that's all about going from potential into actual. Now, not everything is the same. Some things, they come into existence, but they in and of themselves, even when they exist, they're an imperfect and incomplete thing. But the Torah is something so awesome. It's a real completeness. Torah Hashem Tamima. Right. It's a completeness. You dance with the Sefer Torah, you're dancing with everything, right? It's a completeness. It's not a reality of only a part of things. It's mamish, a reality of wholeness, of all inclusive mamish. The Torah is the form of the whole world, and it is that which completes all of existence. That's why it was given not just with one sound, but with 5 sounds. And it wasn't just with 2 or 3. 5 is because it went out in all 4 directions, plus the middle essence. It's a very Maharal kind of a thing to say. It's like north, south, east, west. Torah was heard all throughout the whole globe, and it had its, without losing its essence.
Up and down.
It is also up and down. So when he speaks about Shabbos, he speaks about 7, 6, and then the one in the middle of the year. He's thinking about it this way. Hine morim chamisha kolot. It's also the word Hamashiach. Is also the letters of Chamisha. Also this Indian, like the five levels of the soul. When we can be fully self-expressive, it's also the letter He, which is the letter of expression, right? So it's this very totalizing kind of a thing, right? So the whole Torah came down. This big Hey came to the world. This big like Hey, right? Here it is, right? A sound and a 5-fold sound, right? And therefore now, what's this connection up with Chasana, with Korban Toda, with Chorvas Yerushalayim? What are those things about? Tonight has this very beautiful discussion here about this. Ki re'uya hasimcha. It is appropriate that there should be joy, right, by a wedding. Ki kashem sheha'avel hu behefsed, just like a mourner is missing something. What's happening at a wedding is a completeness, a completing. It's a completing, right? That's what's happening at a wedding. So just like sadness makes sense to be there when there's a lack, so joy makes sense to be there when there's real wholeness. We have nothing in our lives that can approximate wholeness like a wedding. It's just gavaldic. There's nothing that we have that's quite like that, right? It's such a simcha. A human being, even a human being, is the most complete and whole of all creatures in this world. Lo yemitziut shalem, but we're not complete until we're married. Kamoshi Berlin. V'davar zeit ber b'chibur bergola v'kasher yeshem zivug b'yachad hayu shalem al-yedei zivug shalahem. V'adam hu hashlamat al-fichach re'ui hasimcha v'zivug shalem al-netziut hef. V'kasher ein kan simcha kilo ein kan netziut. So therefore, somebody who goes to the wedding and doesn't speak to the chassan and kala, and doesn't add to the joy, they're just eating the sushi or whatever, hitting the shmorg, right? Then is over b'chamisha kolot. He's missing out on his potential to be part of the sound of this joy. These people are having this moment, and this is also true on a smaller scale for any time a person is having any kind of a simcha, even a birthday or whatever. We need to make ourselves part of our friend's simcha. We need to really make ourselves part of it. It means, it's so, and even though we're emphasizing here talking and showing up and being part, but I say showing up, even just showing up, like when something chas v'shalom really bad happens, everyone's there, right? But when something that's happy, that's maybe not mamish a wedding, it's some small celebration that's going on, we're not like, I have to be there, right? We've got to be better at that. Like, I have to be there if there's a simcha. I can't miss a simcha. We have to really try hard to be part of the simcha. And to be part of these 5 kolot, this is going to deepen our whole relationship to Torah, to what Torah is. Like, Torah, what is it? It's books, it's a way of living, what is it? Like, you want to be part of the sound of Torah, of the Torah becoming actualized in the world. Be part of the actualizing of your friend's simchas, and you'll know a little bit what Torah is. Right? It's not just a book, it's an experiential, it's a thing, it's a spiritual reality, what Torah is. You have to make yourself literally an instrument for the joy of your friends in order to have a connection to what the sound of Torah coming into the world is. Because that's what it says. If you don't make your friends joyous at the wedding, then you're missing these 5 kolot. What are those? Kolot are the ones the Navi is describing about weddings. But if you do go, then it doesn't just say you get the sounds of the wedding. It says you get the sounds of Matan Torah. It's a very interesting thing the way the Gemara goes. If you don't do it, you miss the sounds having to do with the wedding, as described in the Navi. If you do go, you get the sounds of Har Sinai even more, because when you become part of their simcha, you become connected to Torah in a much more intimate and in a lived way, not just like reading something, hearing something. You became part of that person's experience of joy, which means they now are more thankful to Hashem because of you. Amazing thing. So that means that the divinity in their life came through you. That's an amazing thing. Ki hakol mor al yetziat davar lapol, k'mo sheyadua min hakol. V'chamisha kol amar metziut shalem. We did that right, right? Ki ha'adam hashlama v'ra'ui sheyeh simcha kasher yesh metziut shalem. That was important. Rabbi Avo Amar. So that's having to do with the wedding. These 5 sounds are also there at a wedding because it's this time of completing, and it's 5-fold because it's so amazing. And when you become part of that, you're going to know, and you're going to become part of what Torah is. Mamish awesome. And Rabbi Avo Omer shehu kili hikriv toda. Rabbi Avo says it's as if you brought a Thanksgiving offering. Bir zeh, what does that mean? Ki haTorah hu sheyesh bo chametz. Ki hatodah, the korban toda is unique. And this is really fascinating what he says here. It's unique because it has 2 opposites in it. The korban toda has both chametz and matzah. There's no other korban that has a combination of chametz and matzah like the Thanksgiving offering has. And even though the bread was not actually burnt on the mizbeach, korban nikra, it's still called a part of the sacrifice. And it's for this reason that the Chazal say, the Midrash Shocher Tov, to Tehillim 100, which is the Tehillim Mizmor LeTorah, Kol hakorbanos yu betelim la'asid, all sacrifices will not be necessary in the future, will become nullified in the future. Chutz mi korban toda, all that will be left is the Thanksgiving offering. You ever heard that before? So here, and in this way, it's similar to Purim, right? There's all the other books of Tanakh will become nullified except the Megillah and the Chumash. And and all the other holidays, except Purim. Purim is never going to leave us, right? Right? The Nasim, and then it says Velo Yosef, Velo Yosef. Anyways, I don't remember exactly, but the Purim is never going to go away, so okay. Why is it? So the Maharal has a very beautiful take on it. There's a beautiful Torah from, for instance, the Berditchever, the Kedushas Levi in Parashas Tzav, about the Korban Torah, having to do with ego and ego effacement, and the matzah having to do with having bittul, making yourself like nullified, and the chametz about having being present and having not becoming just a nothing, having a personality, having full presence. But the Maharal is not focused on the difference of what each one represents. What he's most interested in is the fact that they're two opposites, they're two different things. You can fill in the blank of what they each represent. But what's interesting for him is there are two different things that are very, there's a clear line between the two of them. Matzah becomes chametz, that's it. It's a completely different thing. Why is this so important? Is to make known that all powers, all things in the world which are different, they all come from Hashem. In such a thing, it makes sense to be the korban that you bring when a miracle happens and Hashem saves you from death. And with this I thank Hashem. I'm saying that I myself and my life comes from you, and therefore I'm bringing you a thanksgiving offering. And not just I got saved, but when I got saved, I realized that Hashem is relating to all of reality with all of its differences and opposites, and that it all comes from one God. And this is what makes it clear that God is one and there is no other. And this thing will be most revealed when Mashiach comes. Then we will see on that day. It's not an echad now, but we'll perceive it the strongest then. Therefore, the Korban Torah will never be nullified, because the thanksgiving of Korban Torah moreh all changes and opposites and all of these particularities of reality are all sourced in one God. When everything is related back to Hashem, then we can really see that Hashem is one. Therefore, this korban will never be nullified. This is something that I have like a fascination with the fact that there are 6 constant mitzvahs, right? So one of them is to believe in God, and one of them is to know that God is one. And I always had like a bit of trouble what the difference is between those 2 mitzvahs. What exactly is the difference? Like, if I believe in God, does that mean that there's still room that it could be in someone else? Like, it could be, don't they like mamish? Aren't they the same thing? So I once had this thought that it's part of a longer Torah where I relate up particular mitzvahs that we do to those 6 constant mitzvahs. And to my mind, belief that God exists, this is related to Shabbos. We have Shabbos who believe God created the world in 6 days, and it's all mamish from Hashem exists. And by stopping from work, I'm saying, we're not just here to keep on keeping on. We're here to relate. We're here to relate to Hashem. We're here to relate to each other. Stop, just in this godly reality of relating. Right? There's Ben Adam LeMakom and Ben Adam LeChavero, the 2 luchos. And what's similar between the 2 of them is the word bein. The whole Torah is bein. It's relationships, relating to Hashem, relating to each other. And the world is not It's a backdrop for the possibility of relationship. And Shabbos just tunes me in to believe there's God. Belief that God is one is the Shema. What do we say? It's the Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. But fascinatingly, we have to say it twice a day. And particularly at the times when the sun and the sky and everything changes, right? Exactly just before sunrise, and for a few hours you could do it while the sun is still like bringing its new long morning rays into the world. And then at night, when the stars come out, when this new darkness comes to the world, that knowing that God exists is one thing, but relating all the details of my life this day to the one God, that's like it's another thing to have it connected, to relate that it's all, everything in my life is related back to one God. And it's not like sometimes we can, I believe in God, but like things, the causalities, we can get stuck in a little bit thinking, blaming people or blaming ourselves, and not enough sourcing everything back to Hashem. And saying the Shema, we're kind of plugging back into that reality. And it needs a recharge, mamish, twice a day. It keeps on needing a recharge. Batteries need a recharge. So similarly, the Korban Todah is also this thing, the chametz and the matzah, aside from whatever they represent, they're opposites. And in the fact that the Korban contains both of these, I'm saying to Hashem, all the opposites are yours, all the particularities, all the differences in the world, they all rooted back in your unity. And what's beautiful to me about this also is I never really understood, like, okay, so I love the fact that there are all these different types of sacrifices I could bring. Why should it be there's just a Korban Todah again and again and again? It's like boring. But from this understanding, you could see that it's not boring. It's like saying the Shema again and again and again. You bring another Korban Todah, as your consciousness rises forever and ever, realizing more and more how all the particularities and experiences and all the colors of experiences and all the different aspects of creation are related more and more deeply to the oneness of Hashem. That's the Inyan. The Korban Todah never goes away. L'chacham Ruan says, now therefore, bringing joy to Chassan and Kala also is as if you brought a Korban Todah, because the Chassan and Kala are also two very different beings, right? Shezeh ish v'zot isha. One is a man and one is a woman. Lachem mechulakim lagamre. Therefore, they're completely different things, completely different creations. V'zivug shelahem, for them to come together. Hu min Hashem yisbarach. This is mamish, just like at a wedding. There's such a sense of God because of the difference between the man and the woman, because of how amazing it is for these two lives, from who knows how they were and how they grew up, the choices they made, and the way Hashem brought things, and they met and it worked. Hashem makes the zivug and brings those who are alone home. Carl. Okay, and then the kasher mesameach hachasan as hazivug b'shleimus. When you're making the chasna kala happy, then their zivug is given even more completeness. V'asher hu me'ached hazivug shlahem hu Hashem yisbarach. And being that, so when you are a part of making them happier about this, which is helping them to interface with this other being who is so different from them, and you're helping them to be happy about it, to connect. When you do this, so then you are doing something that is godly. Because the bottom line, who's the one bringing the chassan together is Hashem. And you, by making them happy, helping them get together better, so then you're, once again, a pipeline of how Hashem's energy is getting them off to a great start and giving them that joy of being able to connect. There's also, we saw in last week's parsha that the malach ayeh sarai ishtecha, And he said, Hine ba'ohel. And Rashi says, you see, for me, you should always ask when you go to visit a couple, ask the husband about the wife, ask the wife about the husband in order to endear each of them to each other. And by doing this, the wedding is not just the wedding. The chassan and the kala represent all of the male and female aspects of all of creation, all of the differences, all the particularities, all of the paradoxes, all of the opposites. The davar zekil he kriv korban Torah, and therefore it says when you're making them happy, it's as if you brought korban Torah, which contains both chametz and matzah. But the purpose of the Thanksgiving offering is not just that a nace happened to me, but because for 1 minute the clouds parted and a ray of light hit me in my life. Now I realize, Gewalt, I don't see it all the time, but everything is really like this. And so I bring a korban Torah with the chametz and the matzah, say all the particularities and opposites in the world, they all come from Hashem. And then he says that also, the Gemara says that making a chassan and kala happy are also what is considered as if you're built one of the ruins of Yerushalayim. We said that the marriage is bringing completeness. But is as if you're building one of the ruins of Yerushalayim, because this building that they're creating together is a godly thing. It's as if you're building part of Yerushalayim, because that's what Yerushalayim is. But it's chus, we have to learn about this in Yerushalayim. Because that's what Yerushalayim is. Because that's what Yerushalayim is. It's a godly building, a godly gathering. And this is something that is very, very, very clear, he says. And now it gets back to the original point that if you're making them happy, then you're going to merit the Torah, which was given with 5 sounds. As we've said, that the Torah is that which gives that completeness to the whole world. Because you're bringing more completeness to them, helping them connect better and be happy. So then, lashlim zivug chasan v'kala, you're bringing more completeness to their togetherness. Till there is now reality of completeness. Reb Shlomo, by the way, never translated shalem as perfect. Complete. It's a much nicer word. A much less OCD kind of a word. Complete. But Adam nechshav kol ha'olam, and a human being is considered like the whole world. Adam tzurat kol ha'olam. A person has parallels the shape, the purpose, the spirituality of the world. V'chein Torah tzurat kol ha'olam, and the Torah is also that which gives meaning and purpose and direction to reality. When you're helping them to connect these two opposites, that's what gives completeness to humanity. Adam who kol ha'olam, and humanity is the whole world. Therefore, you will merit the Torah, which is also that reality of completeness of the whole world. And that's why the Torah was given with 5 sounds, because it's all 4 directions, and plus the middle that's representing a total and complete expression of that which is bringing completeness to the world. You now understand Zat Hashem better this aspect of the 5 sounds of Matan Torah. The 5 sounds. And there is another midrash that the Torah was given with 7 sounds. It says here at the end, and we'll learn that next time. Zat Hashem. L'chaim, Shabbos, Shabbos.
Chaim. This is incredible because we just decided to go to this wedding next week.
Oh,
in New
really?
York.
Perfect. Amazing.
I
That is
needed
amazing.
this really fast.
Hashem is so great.
Hashem is great. Thank
Hey,
you so
Yogi.
much. And also, so is that why we have Chamishei Chumshei Torah?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's a shita that Vayibin Soa is a sefer of its own. So Bamidbar is divided into 3 books, which gives you a total of 7. So the Torah is also either 5 or 7, similar to this thing.
Right. And was the world created with the hay?
Olam Hazeh was created with a hay. Yeah. Also. Yes.
Okay.
Totally.
Okay.
Thank
you. I'm so glad I got to come today. Good
Yay,
Shabbos.
amazing. Baruch Hashem. I'm so glad. Thank you so much.
Good
Okay,
Chodesh.
Kol Tuv.
Good Chodesh.